Welcome to another episode of Power Power Boxing Report, episode 313. I am your host, Michael. Took last week off because it was really nothing happening in terms of fights this past weekend. Uh, Joining me on the show, Gayle from Communities Digital News, Daniel from the Inscriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
Hey, now that we've got all that football out of the way, let's get to some real sports. Real sports is back, baby.
And yeah, that was. I wasn't able to watch it live because of work, but from what I was listening to it at the job, and yeah, that was surprising indeed. I'm not a fan. I'm not the greatest fan of Tom Brady, but shout out to him and what Tampa Bay did to Kansas City. No one saw that result. No one. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get talked about. For the time being, if you want to find out all information regarding the show, the blog page is the place to go to, P4P Boxing Report. .wordpress.com. That's the link. If you check the top right of the blog page, you'll find links to where to find the show on where to find Pound for Pound Box Report on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, where you can find the show on all available platforms. That's RSS feed fed distributed, like iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. We're just about everywhere now. Where you can donate, got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link. And it's last but certainly not least, the link to my online coaching page. I am an online coach for Beachbody. If you get interested in getting into some workouts and getting yourself into some shape in 2021, just check out my coaching page for all the programs on Beachbody on Demand, whether it's old school P90X series, whether it's Lift 4, which is exclusively weightlifting, and Body Beast as well, whether it's 6 weeks of the work, bar blend, which the ladies really like. Every workout that fits your interest, whether you're into HIIT, whether you're into weightlifting, just strict cardio, yoga, any and everything else between. Please check out my online coaching page on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page if you're interested. And joining me in a workout challenge, I'm going to do one for March. Please hit me up on Pound for Pound Box Report Twitter page. Just hit me up on my personal Twitter page, Brother JR, at Brother JR76, or you can hit me up via email and excuse me, this is a new email. This is not email on the blog page, but you can hit me up on the email, P4P Box Report 1 at gmail.com. That's P4P BOXREPORT 1 at gmail.com. Let's get things going. Like I said, we took a week off because boxing was light. So we're going to go back 2 weeks for our fight recap. Going to the super middleweight division, LA to be specific, as Caleb Plant, IBF belt holder at 168 pounds, fought Caleb Truax, won by easy margin. Like I said when we previewed this fight a couple of weeks ago, Truax, he looked like a candidate to beat Bob Hope's cousin, No Hope, and it proved to be the case. Plant did basically what he wanted. I'll go to you, Gayle. Plant won one comfortable margin. We knew that that was going to be the case going in. The question is the assessment for Caleb Plant afterwards. A lot of discussion about him and the Canelo Alvarez sweepstakes. As we know, Canelo, his goal for 2021 is to become undisputed champion at super middleweight. So Plant is he has his eye on Plant. Of course, Canelo's going to fight Billy Joe. He's going to fight Yildirim later on this month. Then he's going to fight Billy Joe Saunders in May. And then presumably, if all things go well, he's going to fight Plant in September, should all things go according to plan. The question, Gayle, given what you saw from Plant against Truax, is Caleb Plant ready for the likes of one Canelo Alvarez?
You know, it didn't pass the eye test, did it? Yeah, if you looked at the scores, if you didn't see the fight itself, you'd think, well, okay, Plant blew him out. Well, must have been a good performance. It was okay. Now, he did say after the fight that he had injured or broken his hand in about the fourth or fifth round, and he had to sort of back it off. It didn't particularly hurt him. So the question has to be, with Truax that lackluster, that even with a busted up hand, Plant didn't have a problem with him. Um, you know, was it Plant who dialed it back? And it's tough to say. It just it didn't inspire a lot of excitement. And when you've got somebody that dominant at the top of the division like Canelo is, I mean, it is a hard bar to reach, no doubt. But Plant isn't even coming close. I mean, I would much rather see Saunders. I'd much rather see David Benavidez. I'd much rather see Dimitri Bivol come down to super middleweight, which he has said over and over, making 168 is not a problem for him. So I think to really make the fight interesting for everybody and to raise his stature, Plant needs another good fight and really a good performance before he gets all the way down the road to Canelo. I say feed him to David Benavidez first. It will raise the stakes of whoever wins that fight and makes the Canelo fight that much better, and they're in that much better a bargaining position when they do. Whether either of those guys is going to take the chance of losing before cashing the Canelo lottery ticket, that's going to be the issue. But Canelo can only fight one or the other. I'd say Plant Benavidez need to get it on, and then whoever emerges, is the obvious choice, and it makes it a lot more interesting for fans. Plant and Benavidez, I'd love to see.
I hear what you're saying, Gail. And before I go to Daniel, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Doc, who's joining us live in the YouTube chat, checking us out live on YouTube. If you like what you're hearing on YouTube, if you're listening now, you will listen to us later. Please hit that like button. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button and spread the word about the show. I'll read some comments from Mr. Doc in a bit, but I'll go to Daniel first. I hear what Gail's saying, and she makes a lot of sense. In many ways, I agree with her. Here's the problem, Daniel. It may sound as reasonable as it sounds, as sensible as it sounds for Gail's suggestion that Plant fight a Benavidez. He's not going to do it. The reason he's not going to do it is because of the dangling carrot, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, that being one Canelo. He's not going to risk the opportunity to get on that kind of stage, and more importantly, make that kind of money for Benavidez, particularly Benavidez, who's without a title right now. I'm looking at the fight against Plant. I'm like, given the backdrop of Truax, and Truax not even being the fighter that he was when he defeated a faded and shot-worn James DeGale to win the title, in my opinion. His performance, Plant, it was pretty meh. And I'm saying he's as much as he's talking about how he's the best super middleweight in the world. No, you're not. You're not. Based on what I saw against Truax and even against Fagan Butts or Fagan Boots, however you pronounce his name, my apologies. He's not beating Canelo. I don't know if he beats Billy Joe Saunders, as inconsistent as he is. I don't know if he'll beat David Benavidez. Let's just say he will fight him in the interim before he gets in the ring with Canelo. Your reaction to what you saw, Daniel?
It didn't really pass the smell test like you can say with Gayle, mainly because they're as good as he was doing. You have to take into account, one, it's against somebody that calibers David Truax. Even though he did win the world title, he did beat a good guy in James DeGale. But also like how he got later in the fight. Now he did say, like in a post-fight interview, that he hurt his hand, but you notice in the second half of the fight, Truax, even though he wasn't winning the rounds, there was no way he was winning the rounds. He was starting to land shots, clean shots at Plant. And normally in a 120 to 108 performance, you don't get too many of those, particularly in the second half of the fight. But Truax was landing, and that's what kept Truax in there. And there's even like conversation that maybe Plant was carrying Truax through the fight, but it wasn't really in that manner. But it doesn't impress enough where you can say that you cemented your status in the Canelo sweepstakes, because we've seen Canelo make moves, but so far the move he hasn't made is a move to work with the PBC so far. And I have to agree with Gayle. It's either going to be you or Bandera Roja. So he may not want to, but he may have to fight David Benavidez to get that shot with Canelo. Because it's either going to be me or him that are going to get it the shot as far as PBC fighters are concerned in that area. So it's not impressive. He has a title. Canelo does say that he wants to unify, so that gives him leverage. But at the end of the day, you don't look better than Billy Ho. And that's saying something when Billy Ho was a step above you. And there's questions for you when it comes to Benavidez. Granted, even there's even questions for Benavidez when it comes to weight at this stage. So, not really up there. He did what he was supposed to do, but that's all he did. He did what he was supposed to do.
Here's one potential option I'll shoot at you guys. And again, I want to thank Mr. Doc. I also want to thank Ivan DC20, the Bronze Plumber, for joining us on the show. Thanks for joining the show, folks. You guys mentioned he may have to fight Benavidez. There's another fighter that's a possibility, maybe not at 168, but currently at 160 pounds. That's WBC 160-pound champion Jamal Charlo. He's basically a super middleweight right now, fighting at 160 pounds. He has the frame, he has the size. He could move up easily and would have no problems fitting in. He's in need of a big fight. I know he fought Derevyanchenko his last fight, which is the biggest opponent at 160 pounds, and that's not saying a whole lot. Thoughts of him moving up to 168 and possibly fighting Caleb Plant?
I'm not sure Plant brings a lot to the party. He's not a huge audience draw. If he didn't have the belt, we would not be talking about it. We wouldn't be talking about him at all. That's really the only issue that keeps him in play, is the fact that he's got that belt. But if you've already got a belt, you don't really need to go after somebody, that doesn't bring a lot to the party. I'm not sure. Benavidez has some motivation. He needs a belt. So that's a good fight for him. And he's got every chance of winning that fight. I think if you're putting your hard-earned money on the line, Benavidez versus Plant, I know which way I'd bet. So that makes sense for him. But anybody else, looking to unify, and it's Caleb Plant, I don't know. I don't know if it makes business sense or ring sense.
What say you, Daniel, about the possibility? I'm just throwing it out there, just for speculation. A fight between Plant and, say, a Charlo moving up from 160 to 168.
Well, Maul has wanted to get into the Canelo sweepstakes for a bit. That could be his way in. Because, like I mentioned, the main the main bargaining chip that he has is that belt. So if you have a man in Canelo that says he's going to work with everybody, that he wants to unify the division, you need that belt. So it would make sense to do it. At the same time, is everything settled down to middleweight for you in order for you to do it? That's the main thing with it, and it might be on the PDC side, unless he's willing to fight Matt Karloff again. But we have to see him. We have to see how that happens. But I wouldn't mind it. I personally wouldn't mind it, especially if it gets Jamal into Canelo sweepstakes.
Yeah, but don't you think Maul would rather unify at 160? I mean, for the money, he's better off going after Golovkin.
That's what I mean. Is the business settled at 160? Would you rather go after Triple G? But then, that's the bad part about it, because then we're going to get into this proxy thing, where if Jamal beats Golovkin, but he doesn't beat him the way Canelo beats him, he can say, like, oh, you just beat another Golovkin, or you just beat Canelo's leftovers. That's the bad part of it.
Yeah, but he does, if he emerges, as the unified middleweight champion, I don't know that he gets to undisputed, because you got Andre sort of hovering out there. He's just a problem. So, that's a tough call for him. I would argue he might be better off at 160 than coming up to 160. Canelo's enough of a challenge. It's hard enough. If you're coming up in weight, that's really difficult.
Problem is this. Charlo has been a champion at 160 pounds for a while now. Not a long while, but a long enough time where he could have made moves. Heyman gave him the opportunity to venture out to make a big fight, and it hasn't happened, right? He's talked about fighting Canelo. Canelo wasn't going to make that fight for reasons, okay? That's one. Two, I hear the prospect of him fighting Triple G. The problem is Triple G hasn't been exactly interested in a fight with Charlo either. Triple G, from what I'm hearing lately, there's rumblings of Triple G again, rumblings again of him fighting Murata, who is the regular WBA champion, I believe, right? Maybe in Japan. That's two. Three, you mentioned Andrade. Andrade has been searching for a fight, period, for a big fight, period, as annoying as he can be outside the ring, right? And he's been wanting a fight against Charlo for a while. Why hasn't it happened? And whose fault is that? I would argue it's more Charlo's fault than Andrade, because you can get Andrade in the ring for not a whole lot. He just wants his chance to make some money, right? And to get in the spotlight. So given that, why not, if you get the opportunity to fight Plant, do so? It'll put you in the sweepstakes for a bigger fight. It'll get you some luster that you've been missing, and folks will start to talk about you again. Because, no offense, up until that Deverenchenko fight, people wasn't talking about Charlo. They're just not. They're not. He's kind of he's a man on his own island, just like in the sense Andrade is a man on his own island. People are not talking about fighting him, and when he's had the opportunity to do something, he hasn't.
Well, Andrade is just a problem because he's one of those tricky technical fighters. He's going to make anybody who fights him look bad. He's just difficult. And it doesn't mean and it's not necessarily a very exciting fight. So there's loads of risk and very little reward with him. That's why everybody's giving him a pass, and that creates difficulty for him finding fights. He has to kind of act up a little bit outside the ring and, shoot off his mouth to try to encourage some interest in him. So it was a smart idea of DAZN to give him some color commentating roles and do some extended interviews to kind of let him get himself out there to, generate a little heat. But he's still got lots of problems finding matchups. Nobody wants to mess with it.
Well, there's that. There's the fact that he's a very tricky fighter. He's a very technical fighter. It's one of the reasons why people kept saying Canelo's ducking him.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because he truly, anybody who fights him is going to have a hard time finding him in the ring.
Yep. The problem, though, is he shoots himself in the foot outside of the ring. No matter what, unfortunately. Anytime he's almost presented with an opportunity, something happens in the business side where it can derail it or it just delays things further on, unfortunately, with Andrade. Luckily, Jamal's he's not in that same space, but he's getting there.
And that's the issue. That's the issue. The fact that Billy Joe can't help but get himself in trouble with his mouth and his actions outside the ring. He's in line to fight Canelo in May, and Plant is basically in line if everything works out to fight him in September. If Canelo beats Yildirim and it beats Billy Joe, and yet both Andrade and Charlo are out of the picture right now. Let that sink in. Let's go to some comments here from the live YouTube chat. And again, shout out to those who joined us live on the live show. Mr. Doc says, and I'll highlight for you, Gayle and Daniel, to read. Mr. Doc says that Plant got talent, but his competition is not preparing him for the likes of Cannoli. Funny inside baseball things. There's people who call Canelo Cannoli just for laughs and whatnot. So don't be alarmed by that for those who are listening or checking us out on the show. He knows it's Canelo, but he calls him that Cannoli for a reason. Ivan DC says Plant is the one that needs better names on his resume. He hasn't fought anyone like Darrell yet. Ivan DC says if he beats bigger name fighters than good, he gets Canelo fight. If he doesn't, then it's just the way he's what he was not ready. Excuse me. Bronze Plumber says that Mr. Mexican Beef don't feast on no Plant. Hardy har. That is kind of funny, but he will feast on Plant eventually if all things works out. So for once, Mr. Mexican Beef may have to turn vegetarian in order to get a fight with Caleb Plant. Ivan DC says, I agree. Charlo needs a big fight as of now. He still calls himself the future boxer on Instagram, and he's turning 31 this year. Ouch. You're right about that. And Mr. Doc says, finally, Charlo is another one with plenty of talent, but whose competition has not prepared him for the likes of Cannoli. True indeed. I want to thank everybody for the comments. And please keep them coming and keep your questions coming as well. Let's move on to some news here. Starting off with a bit of some sad news that came down this past Saturday as former heavyweight champion Leon Spinks, he succumbed to cancer and passed away, I believe, at the age of 67. I want to give some time here to give our remembrances and our condolences. Spinks, who came on the scene in the amateurs with his brother Michael, won a gold medal in the 76 Olympics Games. That 76 Olympic boxing team is arguably the greatest U.S. boxing team ever. The Spinks brothers, Sugar Ray Leonard, and the like. In 78, I want to say March of 78, Spinks scored one of the biggest upsets in the sport as he beat Muhammad Ali in Vegas. Lost the rematch later on that fall, I want to say September of 78. His career as a pro really didn't pan out to what it was as an amateur, but he is remembered. He's remembered mostly for that fight against Ali. Condolences to him. He leaves a son, in particular Corey, who went on to become a welterweight champion. Thoughts on Leon Spinks, and I'll start with you, Daniel.
Yeah, it's a sad way to go. Unfortunately, it's one of the you feel like you see his age. It's pretty early. Like I think my mother said in that age range. Unfortunately, with Spinks, and like I said, it's hard to picture somebody that age already gone. But cancer is one of the scourges of the earth, unfortunately, that we currently have, and his career is gonna be highlighted by the fact that he beat Ali. Because somebody has to be the one that does it, that finally ends it when it comes to somebody as old age. We thought last night that it'll be Patrick Mahomes when it comes to Brady, but in this case, like I said, Spinks got in there, yeah. Got a very good record, pretty much respected throughout his career and in the post fight. And it's unfortunately it's just sad. It's just really sad to think about it. And particularly where everything else is happening and you can't really go, unfortunately, right now to his funeral, or can probably pay respects. That's probably the worst part of it. You're in a situation where fans of his probably can't show his respects in person. You normally somebody like that you probably want to go to their funeral. You want to show the respect. You can't now, unfortunately. And who knows just how that's going to happen during the future. So it's just sad.
Oh, there are ways to show respects, and I think that fandom and people who cover boxing, he's certainly been a topic of discussion this weekend. He exemplifies athletes who will tell you one glorious night of victory is worth it all, and that was Leon Spinks. He was 6-0-1 when he fought Ali, and we're just shy of a week from the anniversary, February 15th, 1978. He was expected to be a soft touch, pulled the upset. That was still when we had 15-round fights, everybody. 15-round split decision, complete shocker. Yes, he did lose 7 months later, but hardly anybody even remembers that because it was such a stunning upset. He was only 23 years old. Isn't that the same age Mahomes is when he won that fight? So really an incredible victory for him. And put him in it put him on the map, it put him in the record books. Think about the equivalent today. Think about somebody at 6-0 getting a shot against Canelo, getting a shot against, you know, Terrence Crawford or Errol Spence and winning. That's what it would be like. And you have that one night. That one night arguably was his whole career. But let's not forget, he was an Olympic gold medalist as well, along with his brother. That team, that 76 team, really, we've never had as good a team, I would argue, ever since. So rest in peace, rest in power. 67 is awfully young. Cancer, you're right, Daniel, is just a scourge. Once we get on top of this coronavirus pandemic, I would love to see the medical world really turn all the firepower we had against the virus, putting a vaccine together, to seeing what we can't do about cancer in this world.
Indeed, cancer is just the pits. It's trash. It's evil. It's everything bad. Nothing good about it at all. And just yeah, it's just just the worst way to go. And I will join Gail and Daniel in sending regards, our best wishes, my condolences to one Leon Spinks. And I want to read a comment here from Mr. Doc, who brought up an interesting note here. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it. Uh, Give me a quick second. Give me a quick second, folks. Here it is, right here. He says an interesting note here. Weren't all three Spinks, Leon, Michael, and Corey undisputed champions at heavyweight, light heavyweight, and welterweight, respectively. Well, I was going to add here in the chat, but it depends, Doc. If you, it depends on how you view the WBO, right? Michael was undisputed light heavyweight champion, and when he beat Spinks, I think he was undisputed heavyweight champion as well. Uh, no. He, I could be wrong about that. I think I'm wrong about. I think you may be wrong about the heavyweight champion. I can't remember who were the heavyweight champion, other heavyweight champions. If there was another heavyweight champion in '85, when Spinks beat Holmes, right? But he was certainly like heavyweight champion, undisputed Spinks. Leon, of course, when he beat Ali, he was undisputed heavyweight champion. The reason I say ask if your status, your viewpoint of the WBO, because Corey was IBF, WBA, WBC champion at 147 pounds, right? What about the WBO? Do you feel, Doc, that the WBO, that you have to be WBO champion as well to be undisputed? If you do, technically, he was not. But if you don't, at the very least, Spinks Corey was unified and held all of the quote unquote major belts at 147 pounds. Either way, your point here, it shows a heck of a family accomplishment, something that didn't come to my mind. And it just reading it now, it makes you say, wow. Your thoughts on that quickly, Daniel?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's very underrated. There's not a lot of families that did what the Spinks family does, and actually, it makes it even more incredible considering how many people have not really, you can say, measured up to the family legacy. Obviously, the current examples being Chris Eubanks Jr. in respects to what his father did, and despite the title, Gale's favorite Mexican, who Chavez Jr. has not really, like I said, has not really lived up into it. And even look at Canelo's family. His brother never really measured up in that area. Neither did Chavez Jr.'s brother. It's tough to do what you can do that when it comes to a family like that, particularly in those weight classes. The closest I can say right now, as far as trying and being somewhat consistent as far as to the levels of success, has been the Smith family so far. Steven at a 130, Liam at a 154, and obviously Callum before Canelo beat his ass. So it's tough. It's tough to do that, but any family that does it, you got to commend them.
And as Doc also said, 100. Corey was 100. Held a world title at 154 pounds, as well. So yeah, again, rest in power. All our condolences to the to family and friends and loved ones of one Leon Spinks. Let's move on to some more news here. Going to begin talking about a conversation that we had here in the private chat. Story which I wrote about. I submitted for Three Kings Boxing. You can check out my writing on threekingsboxing.com. Shout out to the head of Three Kings Boxing, 2K, the head of media relations, Bo, as well as our senior writers, Bakari, Jarrell, Editor Red. Shout out to the whole Three Kings Boxing crew. And this regarding one Luis Nery, who it can be argued, Daniel, has gone from a potential star back in 2000, a guy who was considered a future star of the sport in 2017 when he beat Shinzuki Yamanaka for the bantamweight title, to now 3.5 years later is considered one of the sport's villains. That may be too strong of a word, but maybe not. That is the reason I say that is because news broke today via ESPN Deportes that Nery has decided to split up with well-regarded and renowned trainer Eddie Reynoso, Reynoso, of course, the trainer of one Canelo Alvarez, the trainer of one Oscar Valdez, the trainer of one Ryan Garcia, the trainer of one Julio Cesar Martinez, the flyweight champion. Um, this could be a case that because Reynoso has so many fighters in the fold that Neary felt that Reynoso could give him the amount of attention that he deserves, right? But then on the other hand, this may be a sign of a pattern, Daniel, because this is the same Neary who was with Freddie Roach, wasn't even with him for a full fight because of the situation regarding Emmanuel Rodriguez, where Neary, and this is where the villain part comes in, came in overweight again, and the fight was scrapped because of that. He decided to leave Roach. Goes with Reynoso, works with him for one fight. In that one fight, he happened to win the WBC junior featherweight title in November, I believe it was. Alameda, he defeated by decision, and yet you hear news of him breaking up with Reynoso now. Um, in short, Daniel, what up with this dude?
It's probably a combination of that the Reynoso camp right now is becoming so full that you really can't gauge timing when it comes to fighters, especially since a lot of them have to go to Mexico to train. And with the travel issue right now, that makes it difficult. The part of it, though, that's probably telling is also that we have to mention he did win the title, but they Neary didn't exactly get glowing reviews in that fight because we're used to seeing his power. We're used to seeing Panterita trying to knock people out. So it could be also that the fit wasn't there, but you need to settle with the coach and you're from Tijuana and you're a puncher. You might as well go with the puncher's coach right there in Tijuana. Be a hometown hero. And I'm pretty sure Eric wouldn't mind having that, him and Munguia in the camp, working in together. Granted, no defense will be involved, but it has to be settled at a certain point because if you bounce from fighter, from trainer to trainer to trainer to trainer, you don't learn the lessons. You don't learn the adjustments that you need to learn in order to be a long-term success. Because, like we're going to talk about power later on, power only takes you so far.
I'll go to you, Gail. I'll ask you the same question I asked Daniel. Um, Luis Neary decides to leave Reynoso. What up with him? Why?
There's a lot of rumors. I'm sure you've heard them when you were reporting on this, Michael, and none of them were real positive. I will say this without acknowledging any of the rumors that it's well known that camp is tight. That camp is disciplined. Those guys have a real peer pressure work ethic that goes on there. You better get with the program. And it's not as much from the Reynosos as it is toward each other. Canelo is the boss. He runs a tight ship. He has no bullshit, no fooling around, no partying, nobody that doesn't work hard. You need to fit in to the whole program. You can't just function well with the trainers and do what you're told. You've got to have that whole mindset. And if you do fit in, we've seen what happens. We're going to see how Oscar Valdez is doing here in a couple of weeks, real quick. We've seen how much good it's done Ryan Garcia, Frank Sanchez, Ramirez. The guys coming out of that camp are enormously successful. They have to kind of give themselves up to it and go with it. And it's sort of, if you don't fit in there, it's kind of like being shut out of the cool kids club in high school. And it's true that Reynoso's got a lot of guys he's working with. If Neary felt he wasn't getting that kind of time and attention, fair enough. If it was just simply not a good fit, okay. But I think we all guess the reasons might be that he just wasn't, passing the smell test with those guys as far as work ethic and so forth. So where does he go? Well, yeah, it would make sense for him to go 40 miles south here of me to cross the border and work with Eric Morales, if that makes sense. There are other regional trainers in the San Diego area that, frankly, would do okay with him. That would be fine. I'm thinking of Carlos Barragan Jr., who's worked with a bunch of guys at the House of Boxing, which is where Canelo and some of those guys do their public workouts, and they're known to frequent. Barragan's been in the corner of Antonio Orozco. He's worked with on and off with a bunch of the Molina brothers. Interestingly enough, he's also trained several guys who've been Canelo's sparring partners, including a young Chilean light heavyweight who he's very high on. And so he's just north of the border, so he could stay in the area if that's what he wants to do. But obviously he's got to land somewhere else. And, maybe he's just run into bad circumstances, but damn, it's just not a good look, especially with his lack of discipline in the past. We're tarring him with it now without really knowing what happened. But, fool me once, fool me twice, etc.
And that's the thing. He's not going to get any kind of favor from the folks, particularly those who watched him over the years. I mentioned the Yamanaka fight in 2017, which he looked like he was on the verge, and there was talk of him possibly fighting Inoue.
We were so excited about this guy. Remember how we
hell, you, myself, and Bo, we were up.
Yeah,
we were up live early in the morning, doing a live morning, 7 o'clock in the morning or so my time. The night of that, the morning 7 o'clock or so in the morning, doing a recap of that fight, right? What happened? What happened in the day after was he failed a drug test. Okay, kind of got a pass. Non-title fights a rematch with Yamanaka. What happens then? In one of the one of the grossest displays of lack of discipline, he comes in not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 pounds overweight. He's allowed to fight, destroys Yamanaka in 2. And Daniel, you remember the look that Yamanaka gave Neri after the fight? Like, you son of a bleep, bleep, bleep. Okay. Yeah. And from there on, he's been in rebuild and reboot mode. And just like we talked about how Andrade keeps shooting himself in the foot at the negotiation table. And now we've talked about endlessly how Billy Joe Saunders keeps constantly shooting himself in the foot. Luis Neri, he's Mexican Cheddar Bob. He also shoots himself in the foot. He can't help himself.
And
it's always something.
And maybe, I'm just saying, maybe this time the split's for innocent reasons, but come on, who's going to give him the benefit of the doubt this time? Again, nobody. Nobody.
That's the problem. That's the problem. Like, you do it too many times, they're going to think automatically it's going to be you. Like,
got a bad reputation. I mean, it's just stuck to him like a bad smell right now.
Yeah, like it has. We have to remember that Yamanaka fight got him banned from Japan. Like, he cannot fight in Japan anymore because of what he pulled against Yamanaka. So even if there's a big fight, even if Inoue goes up to 122 later on and Neri's somehow still there, he can't go to New Year's Eve and get that money and get that Japanese New Year's Eve money. He's banned from the country. So, or even if if Inoue loses to Kazuto, if they fight, can't fight Kazuto either. So it's just a mess. It's just a mess. That's why I'm saying, like, go home, go to Eric, have him talk to you, because he's from your city. He's the most accomplished member in boxing from your city. And maybe you can learn a couple things from him, because there's, as much as Eric Morales has done, and a lot of bad blood has been shed when it comes to some of his fights and some of the dealings. At least from what I've heard, he has not really been known as somebody that will lie to you about what you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Uh, we move on to that controversy,
Might go away.
and to I'm sorry, I was having a little bit of connection problems. Let me restart again. Um, I'm not muted. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay, I was sorry. I was having a little bit of technical issues on my end. My apologies for that. We go on to that controversy regarding Luis Neris, to controversy which kind of spawned the title of this particular episode, "Sleeping Dogs Don't Lie," and that goes back to this goes all the way back to February of last year. Uh, the rematch between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, in which Fury dominated, beat up when Fury dominated, beat up, beat down, walked, walked the mud hole and stomped it dry on Deontay Wilder to win the WBC title, stopped him in 7 rounds, right? And the litany of discussions afterwards in terms of what happened with Wilder, whether it's the suits, uh, the gloves, uh, Wilder in many ways coming off him as a conspiracy theorist when he finally opened up with his reaction to what went down uh, in Vegas at the MGM Grand, right? One of the accusations that Wilder made was he accused his then trainer, Mark Breland, of spiking his water. Um, he felt that he drank some water from that Breland gave him some water, and he felt funny, really, from the time he got into the ring throughout the fight, and he was mad that Breland stopped the fight. Okay, right? Breland, for the most part, has stayed relatively silent about the issue. That was until, and again, the staff at Three Kings, myself, I want to say Bakari, uh, kind of worked tandem on a couple of separate articles regarding some comments for Breland, who was on the Fight Is Right podcast with co-host Tunde Ajay, Spencer Fearing. They talked about Breland's career, but they also talked about the relationship between he and Wilder, and the accusations that Wilder threw towards him. Breland said it wasn't true. He says it doesn't make any sense. He says that he was not the one who was giving Wilder water during the fight and whatnot. It was JD's. They also touched on the controversies surrounding the gloves, and Breland's response was that, okay, why is Wilder throwing all this at me when again it was JD's who was the one who went into Fury's dressing room to inspect, to basically watch Fury have his gloves taped, right? And he wonders, and I wonder this too. He's saying all of this. Where is the culpability towards Dees? Why is Dees in the camp still a Wilder, while Breland, he got the boot? And then what really probably set Wilder off, they was talking about Fury and whatnot, and he talked about the limitations of Wilder and the kind of frustrations in terms of training him. And he's basically said, does he care about a third fight between Fury and Wilder? He said no, because Wilder's not going to beat him anyway. It That spawned a reaction from Wilder, who went, I think, I want to say on 78 Sports, gave his pushback, saying that Breland was envious of him, and basically going on the same line of this something funny was going on with Breland that night and with other things, quote unquote, that night. Um, yeah, just a whole bunch of stuff and kind of left me shaking my head. I was just like, yeah, I hear you, Wilder, but I disagree with what a lot of what you're saying here. I'll go to you first, Daniel, because I shared with you Wilder's appearance on 7 8 Sports TV. Your reaction to that, your reaction to what Breland had to say on the Fight Is Right, and how this issue between Wilder, Breland, and everything post that loss to Fury, um, it still continues.
Ah, man, all the goodwill that Deontay built, at least in interviews, in trying to be the American light in the heavyweight division, in less than a year, he's managed to ruin it. He's managed to ruin it. And this, okay, number one, this involves somebody in the antiwater, unfortunately, surrounding himself with yes men, surrounding himself with people that are telling him it's not your fault that you lost to Fury, and it's not your fault. You really didn't lose. This happened. Da 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 da. When at the end of the day, it's been known that Wilder doesn't really do a lot when it comes to training and because it comes as far as like endurance and calisthenics. Like almost everything is focused on power, and that only works for so long.
According to Breland, Wilder doesn't jump rope. What the
Yeah,
hell? How you gonna be a fighter and you not jump rope?
that's what I mean. Nothing that gets you when it comes to range of endurance. Almost everything relating to power, and that's probably one of the reasons, like I said, why they left. Because even though we in the show, even myself, I'll say it. I forgot which episode, but I said it. Like I feel that one time that I felt Deontay Water needed to change trainers because I felt like there's only so much that you can learn from these and from Breland without getting into other areas. Seeing you could work on something else, some other trainers. You could look into it. Even even I said it when it came into that, but that was because we started not to see any growth from Deontay after a while. There was slow growth, like little wrinkles there after the Stubborn fight, after he won the title. But then after a certain point, it started to become almost a script. Deontay would not get busy in the early rounds. He'd dig himself a hole a little bit on the scorecards, and then he'll land a right hand, and that'll save him. It happened against Gerald Washington. That fight, like where it didn't look in like the second, third time around, didn't look really, really good for Wilder until he got saved by his power. Or the second fight with Ortiz, where it didn't look as good as it was in the first fight, and then he got saved by his power. And now, obviously, the fight with Fury, you go 12 rounds, you did two knockdowns, and those two knockdowns didn't happen. That would have been your first loss, and then the second fight, this happens. At a certain point, he has to take into account that he's burning bridges that he cannot risk being burned. Because Mark Breland is respected throughout the entire boxing community. And maybe some trainers that you think could work with you may not work with you because of the way you're treating Mark Breland. And getting into this attitude saying, I'm feeding him, I'm doing this, I'm like, okay, yeah, he was your trainer, he worked with it, but he also works with a whole lot of other people that are getting paid. You probably not getting paid as much as you did. But then again, you probably would not have survived as long as if it wasn't for some of the things that Breland taught you in the first place. So, like I said, as somebody who's still like at least on a legal level, still says that maybe Deontay should get his third fight with Fury. He shouldn't be fucked over by the pandemic in that area, even if he loses. And even when it comes to that, he's burning that bridge. It's like almost at a point where you probably do not want to see Deontay after this, or at least not anywhere in the title picture. And that's all he's got right now. That's all he has, and he can't burn any more bridges.
I'll go to some comments here before I go to you, Gail. Mr. Doc says at Pound for Pound Boxing Report, this shit show is a prime example why I say this is the weakest era of American boxing in my time on earth. Wow, that is wow. Expand on that, Mr. Doc. Add some more commentary why you say why you feel that. While you do so, I'll go to Gail with her reaction to this back and forth between Wilder and Breland.
This does nothing for either of them. It does nothing for the sport of boxing. It makes Wilder look like, he's just spiraling. It just makes him look crazy. And there's an odd connection with the stuff going on with Neri. Not exactly the same, but Wilder's starting to get into that reputation category where he keeps saying, more and more outrageous things that become harder and harder to believe, that, he's starting to get a reputation that doesn't pass the smell test. It's like Neri, based on what we've already seen, what are we supposed to believe? Breland, if Breland really was this bad of an actor, why has it taken all this time before he, got caught? I'm just not buying it. There's been not one word of any sort of trouble, any sort of reputation, and of all people, Breland is one of those few guys in the corner who's been in the ring, who gets it, who understands what it's like to be out there by yourself, and having counted on just a handful of people to get you ready. I think I am very worried about Deontay Wilder as a human being at this point. And somebody needs to intervene. Somebody needs to get a hold of him and find out what's really going on. If he's as messed up as I think he is, somebody needs to help him, because this goes way beyond boxing. And I don't think I'm being alarmist about this. A lot of people, are really struggling with their mental health these days. The pandemic sure hasn't helped. And there is no shame in asking someone to help you get yourself straightened out. We don't criticize somebody for going to a doctor when they're ill, when they've got some kind of chronic condition that needs to be treated. We're just talking about cancer. No, nobody criticizes anybody for seeking treatment when they've got cancer. Nobody should criticize anyone or stigmatize anyone for seeking treatment for a mental illness that's the equivalent of cancer. Is that what's going on with Wilder? I'm not saying it is, but he shouldn't delay if it is. And it was the man across from him in the ring, Tyson Fury, that proved when you do attend to those problems, work on them, you can restore your mental health. You can do it, but it's hard work. I hope, if that's the category he's in, that he does get himself back to health. He's got a family. They've got to be concerned about him. This is just a very painful thing to see for any human being.
Where is the self-analysis and the admission of self-analysis privately and publicly. Where is the example that Wilder has looked inward, has looked in the mirror, and had a come to Jesus meeting with self? We haven't seen it because all he's done in the aftermath of his loss is point finger and blame, right? Everybody with eyes could understand why Breland stopped that fight because he was getting beat up. He was in danger of getting seriously hurt. I mean, Fury was a savage that night. I mean, damn it. It was at one point during the fight where Wilder was bleeding and Fury licked the blood from his shoulder. He was on one, okay? And he wasn't going to stop. And he was floundering all around the ring. To your point, Gayle, Breland, knowing what it is to be a fighter, knowing what it is to be a guy that is hurt and in serious danger. And if you think I'm wrong, just look at the fight with Marlon Starling and how in the situation that Breland was in that fight. It was very similar to what Wilder was in the second fight with Fury. Okay. He knows when a fighter is seriously hurt, and he wasn't going to let Wilder go through that. Okay. That's one thing. Two, and I'm going to get very personal here. In the year of 2020, in the month of February, Black History Month, you, Deontay, cannot talk all this Black power-ish. And I'm not mad at you for doing that. You know, I'm Black and proud myself, okay? You do that on the one hand, but when all comes down to it, you get rid of the brother. You get rid of the brother. You get rid of the Black person when anyone with sense, and even he has admitted that, and Breland tried to point this out, that when it came that night, Dees had played his own role in your quote unquote demise, since you pointed the finger and acting like everybody was at fault for you losing except you and what you did or did not do. Dees had just as much of a role as Breland did, if we're going to go there. Why get rid of Breland and you get rid of the white dude? Why are people not pointing this out? Wilder's defenders especially. Aligning himself with this. That question needs to be asked. You can't say you Black this and Black that. Again, I have no problem with it. I'm with that. But you can't do that. But when both guys are just as responsible for your fall, you get rid of the Black guy, but you keep the white cat. That's more than anything that ticks me off. It doesn't make any sense. That coupled with the fact that you're not publicly not having any accountability and your responsibility for your actions, people are not going to believe, people only going to buy so much from you. And you're talking all about this and that, and Breland's right. At the end of the day, Wilder is one-dimensional. Everybody knew it before the fight, and it was ruthlessly exposed by Fury after the fight. Where is the pictures of this guy training? Why hasn't he? It's been over a year now. It's been almost a year since this fight. Why hasn't he hired a new trainer? Don't give me this stuff where we're talking about it. Well, we're talking about it. Don't talk about it. Damn it, do it. Do it. If you're really serious about getting back on top, do what you have to do to get back on top. And let's see some evidence of that. And until then, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear a bunch of speculation and innuendo, particularly when you're not providing proof. If you're going to throw these charges around, at least give folks some proof. Don't just talk it and believe, and just because you think that you're quote unquote king, that people are going to follow you. Nah. That's not how it works, sir. You're losing the PR game, and you're losing it badly outside of your stands and fanboys. That's all I got to say about this. This is getting ridiculous. This is getting ridiculous. It pains me to see. Well, I'm gonna say it pains me. That's the wrong word, but it infuriates me that this stuff is being thrown around and no proof, no accountability, no responsibility. Uh, uh, you claiming one thing, but your actions are indirect or antithetical to what you claim to believe, to what you claim that you're about. If you're about the people, if you're about the folks, no. If you're about the people, you're about the folks. You don't sit there when all parties or have culpability and you get rid of the brother and you keep the white dude. No. I'm not buying that. Get the fuck out of here. Last word on this, Daniel and Gayle.
Oh, I think you had the last word, Michael. I will rest on that.
Yeah, the only thing you can add is that everything happens because he has surrounded himself with yes men. And if you surround yourself with enough people whose only job is to say yes to whatever you say, they'll hide whatever they need to hide as long as all they need to do is say yes. It's one of the things. It's one of the downfalls of many other people. But yeah, I wasn't gonna touch on that Black History Month tip, but yeah, that ain't a good look, Deontay.
Yeah. Let me get a couple of quick comments here because I know Mr. Doc and a couple of comments here from Mr. Doc in the question. He says, pound for pound box report, and Breland is a thousand times more qualified. Who the F is D's? Exactly. Who was this D's dude before Wilder came on the scene? We hadn't heard of him training anybody prominent. We hadn't heard any word of him being a good quote unquote trainer. You keep him and you give the boot to the man with the reputation, accuse him of being jealous? Bruh, jealous of what? He got his, and he's going to get his. And because of the bona fides he's built, people are going to find him more plausible than you or D's. D's comes off as a dude hanging on your coattails, and you keeping him for no good damn reason. And look, and what also Doc says, I'm moving up here some earlier commentary. Here we go. Doc says, how do we go from Ali, gold undisputed champion, Frazier, gold undisputed champion, Foreman, gold undisputed champion, to this? We used to win gold medals in boxing for fun. This is in response to my question about why he feels that this is the weakest of American boxing era on earth. He said we used to win gold boxing medals for fun. Now we're just happy if we win medals at all. I'll answer your question right quick, Mr. Doc. If you have a quick word, Gayle, please respond to Doc's questions and basically his little bit of a justified rant, in my opinion. Part of the problem is, Doc, is that the failure of the U.S. amateur system. It's a joke. It hasn't been that great. It hasn't been that good since the 90s. It needs to be deconstructed and reconstructed. You don't have any real quote unquote trainers. You don't have any guys like Al Mitchell there anymore, who coached the 96 boxing Olympic team. And that's on the one hand. On the other hand, a lot of folks who were boxers in the 70s, 80s, and 90s are transitioning to other sports, unfortunately. Boxing gyms have dried up all across the country, and it doesn't help that we're in a pandemic right now, and you don't see any boxing gyms opening. So it's just a multitude of reasons. I'll go to you, Daniel. A quick word in response to what Mr. Doc is talking about here, kind of like the how American boxing has devalued over the years.
Well, to say
not devalued, but has lost its value and luster and his kind of street cred over the years.
Well, bluntly, because people saw what Ali went through, and it's affected Parkinson's, and that scared a lot of parents. Scared a lot of parents whose kids might have gone to the boxing gym, but instead, because they felt that because of the equipment, that it would be safe, Probably took them straight to the football field. Only for now, decades later, to learn that the very equipment that was meant to keep football players safe, football players have been using as weapons on the field, pretty much. And it's made the situation worse. We're starting to see the turnaround where a lot of those parents that probably a generation ago would have taken their kids to the football field instead of the boxing gym, they're probably taken to the boxing gym because you don't have to train as often or during for weekly matches. If you get hurt, you actually have time to heal. And you can actually, if something happens when it comes into injuries, you can, like say, you can heal a lot more with it. But that's the problem of it. And also because there's not the money in there anymore. Let's face it, Americans, we said it. We only pay attention. The casual fan only pays attention to the heavyweights if you're an American. And even though all the other divisions got pretty good people, Roy Jones, Floyd, because they were not that big, they didn't get as much shine as you think they would have. And let's not forget how those two got screwed in 1988 and 1996 person in their Olympics. And that probably left a lot of people, a lot of Americans' kids taste in their mouth the wrong way when they look at it. Why go for Olympic glory when you feel like even in your own country you're going to get screwed?
Very, very good points. Very, very good points. And I think we'll leave the conversation at that because I know I think Gayle, she's had a long day. And I know she wants to I'm pretty sure she wants to close up shop early to get some rest. So let's go to preview some fights here. And instead of having everybody talk about fights, both you and Daniel talk about fights together, a particular fight, excuse me. Let's kind of split things up to cut down on some time here. A lot of fights on the docket this Valentine's Day weekend. Let's start with the ESPN card, headlined by Joe Smith Jr. and Maxim Vlasov. I believe, Gayle, you took part of a conference call earlier today regarding Smith and Vlasov, and I'll get some details on that as well as your preview of the fight.
Well, we spoke to both Smith and Vlasov today, and the Russian's sort of in the nothing to lose category. He's a veteran. He's had, I think, 48 fights, if I recall. Only 3 losses on his record, all of them to decent names, and he avenged one of them. One of his losses was early in his career to Isaac Chilemba, and he came back and got him. He's biting off a lot with Joe Smith Jr., but, he's getting a shot. He's taking a shot. You have to respect him for that. It is very, very hard to see him losing to Smith. Smith has somewhat resurrected himself. He took that. He's had some of these spectacular underdog wins. The shocker against Von Farah, blasting Bernard Hopkins out of the ring in Bernard's last fight, and then he has a terribly difficult fight where he's just made to look useless against Dmitry Bivol. That's the kind of guy Bivol is, which is part of the reason Bivol has so much trouble getting fights. But Smith is just on the comeback. He said today, the pandemic has actually been a good thing for him because he's had nothing to do but train. We all know his work ethic. Speaking of work ethic, that's kind of been a theme of the show tonight. Guy's work ethic's off the charts. Top ranks. BP or CEO, Todd DeBuff was kidding him about, you snowed in there on Long Island, or are you buried, or how you doing? And he says, oh no, I got right out there and shoveled snow, man. It's a great workout. It's great for your back. And he starts bragging about shoveling snow. And Todd says, well, Joe, if you win this fight or you win a title, you probably can hire someone to do that. And he's like, oh no, I love it. It's great. And he means it. He's not kidding. This is a guy, remember, who, developed all that punching power by running a jackhammer and digging trenches as a union construction worker. So he's used to working hard. He likes it. It feels good to him. You know, he's had some injuries over time as well. He seems to be in great health, great spirits, ready to go, and really ready in the current light heavyweight division to take that run. So this is really the opening round, if you will, in this kind of last chapter where he'd really like to take a run at things. And, you know, don't we all hope that we see something like Joe Smith and Artur Beterbiev? They're both there under the top ranked banner. So, you know, cross your fingers. But this is simply the appetizer to that fight. Smith really should not have any trouble this weekend.
To your point, Gail, I think that you mentioned the loss to Bilal. March of 2019, I believe that fight was. He lost by decision. But the thing is, he hurt Bivol won by comfortable margin, but Smith hurt him a couple of times. I think that Smith learned more from that fight than any other victory, including the Hopkins victory, right? Because he was in there against a real boxer in his prime. And when you put that together with what you mentioned about the pandemic and how it's forced him to have some time off, I think that, and the fact that he's not working as much from his regular construction job, I think this pandemic and the adjustment the sport has had to make to the pandemic as a result, he's the one fighter that it has helped, because it's forced him he's the guy who's basically looked in himself and had an evaluation of himself, and he's worked on his trade, right? I look at his last few fights, I think he's fighting better now. The Alvarez fight, the Jesse Hart fight, I think he's fighting better now from a technical boxing standpoint than any point of his career. He's just not. He's more than just a guy with TNT in his fist. He's shown himself to have real skills.
So now he's a guy with skills and TNT in his wrist.
There you go.
That is lethal stuff.
There you go. So I think even at age 31, I think there's potential for him to be even better now than he has been throughout his career. And I agree with you. I believe he's going to beat Vlasov. And if he catches Vlasov with the power, you know what that's going to, that could end up, because Smith is that one guy at 175 pounds, along with Bivol. I mean, not Beterbiev, excuse me, who can end matters in one punch. So looking forward to that. That's going to be on ESPN the 13th on the undercard. Daniel, interesting fight here as Richard Jackson Marinez, who many people feel beat Rolly Romero last year, right? He's fighting Richard Comey, who's on the comeback trail. Comey, of course, lost to Teofimo, lost his IBF title, got stopped in the second round. Despite the controversial quote-unquote loss to Rolly, it seems like Marinez, he's getting a bigger shot now in the aftermath of that fight than Rolly has in his subsequent matchups following that fight. This is a low-key, very intriguing matchup. You don't know where Comey is. I'm really interested in watching this fight. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very interested when it comes to Comey, because you have to see how he's going to come back from the whole situation with Teofimo, because we saw what happened, like I said, with another fighter that was young, had decent power, was able to get into, like I said, a good prominent position, and then he faced somebody that wasn't able to really fall in the traps in many ways. Like, and I'm talking about Isaac Dogbe. Like, so when he fought Navarrete. In the end, I'm hoping they said Comey's in the position like that where, okay, Teofimo beats you, and then your next fight, you're just not the same. Because there's some fighters who don't really take losses very, very well. Even even though they train, even though they do everything right, they still don't take losses really well, and that's the intriguing part with Comey right now. Especially right now when he's stepping into a lightweight picture that has gotten pretty crowded since he last had the title. So he's trying to build himself. He knows he probably has an inside track into top rank. Probably to he could get Teofimo back after he handles Kimbosos because the purse bid was ordered today, I think. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes from there. It's always good to see a reclamation project come in that area, but hopefully it's not too bad of a reclamation project.
I'm sorry there, I was on mute. Let's go to some more fights here. Uh, Going from the ESPN, that Comey Morenez fight is going to be on the Carter Smith Vlasov. Let's go from there to Leeds, England, and Josh Warrington. A lot of news surrounding him. Uh, Recently vacated the IBF featherweight title. We talked about that on the last episode. He's making his return to the ring following 16-month layoff to fight 22-year-old Mexican by the name of Lara. I admit I don't know much about Lara. I haven't seen much of him on film. I'll go to you, Gayle. If you've seen more, if you have more details on Lara, please provide it. And do you think he's going to give Warrington any comp here?
Puncher's chance kind of fighter, doubtful. This is a golden opportunity for a young fighter. He's only 22. He's from Mexico City. And, he has a couple of losses on his record. He's 21-2. He has some punching power. He's got 14 knockouts, but he has, kind of a typical young Mexican journeyman's record against a bunch of guys. He has beaten a few guys with, decent winning records, but he's also barreled into those guys who are, 16-6 and 8-6 and 28-10-2 kind of guys. Warrington's on a completely different level than anyone he's looked across at. Not to say he doesn't have a shot, but it's a long shot, that's for sure. But good for him. This is exactly the kind of fight that a 22-year-old kid like him should absolutely take if he's got the opportunity. It's going to be his first fight outside Central America. He's only had one fight outside Mexico, in the interior of Mexico at all. He had a fight in Argentina, and that's it. And now he finds himself at Wembley Arena. He's probably pinching himself. But this is the kind of fight that's good for him. It's the right fight for Warrington. He needs to shake the rust off. That's all this fight is for him.
Yes, I said and I want to give a bit of correction. I said Leeds, but the fight is exactly in Wembley Stadium. That fight is going to be also on the 13th. It's going to air live on the Zone. Going to move on to some more fights here to talk about quickly. I'll go to you, Daniel. We're going to go from England to another DAZN air card that's going to happen in Indio. California is going to be headlined by. Let's go to the co-main event first. Patrick Teixeira, who has a belt at 154 pounds, WBO version. He's going to be fighting his mandatory by the name of Castano. Castano, his best known fight is a draw with Erislandy Lara. Teixeira, again, he has a WBO title. This is a mandatory title defense. Interesting here is that what could be on the line, particularly if Teixeira wins. Jermell Charlo, who's unified champion at 154 pounds, he, like Canelo, has a mission of becoming unified, undisputed champion in 2021. Of course, Jermell, he wants it to happen at 154 pounds. Teixeira, if he wins, he has openly talked about wanting to fight Charlo. But in order for that to happen, he has to defeat Castano. These two have history. Teixeira and Castano, they've sparred on two previous occasions. They consider each other good friends. But as I wrote again for a personal piece that I did on Teixeira, friendships and companionship goes out the window once the fighter steps in between the ropes and the bell rings. Your thoughts on the Southpaw champion Teixeira and the fight against Castano?
That's going to be an interesting fight because we have to remember Mark Teixeira initially was thought of as a middleweight prospect, and so we found that middleweight wasn't exactly his best division, so he went down the weight. He's found some success, and like we talked about in the past few weeks when we mentioned that Brian Garcia Manny Pacquiao situation, these are some of the doors that can be opened if Oscar and Al sit down and start talking business. Otherwise, you're going to have a situation where Teixeira wins and Mel decides he's going to do some other thing, fight some other PDC guy, or probably, like for example, just give a fight to J Rock. It's a situation where he will be trapped into it. This is a good avenue and a good test to see what you can actually do across the area. And for Castagna, the same thing. It's going to be the same thing. You need to win out. You know your fighter. You know who you're facing. And sometimes the more dangerous enemy is the one that you know rather than the one you don't know. So this is going to be a very interesting fight to me. I expect Teixeira to win because he was a decent prospect before coming into the U.S. So I do expect him to win. And if Mel is watching, hopefully he watches and does the Birdman hands, sees some money.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's going to be Gayle on the undercard of the main event, which will be Jojo Diaz fighting a guy, Rakimov. I'm not going to try to pronounce his first name because I will butcher it. Anyway, Diaz upset Tevin Farmer January last year, I believe it was, to win the IBF 130-pound title. I don't know much about Rakimov. My apologies for that. If you have seen him on film, your thoughts against Diaz. When you look at Jojo Diaz, do you think he's one of these guys? The old adage being that once a fighter wins a world title, he becomes 25% better instantly, right? Diaz has always been a tough tough guy, but I felt that he was a guy who would come up short in the big fight. He proved me wrong against Farmer. I saw him against Gary Russell, and I thought he's just going to be one of those guys who's going to be a good B-level guy, but I didn't think of anything special. Could we see Diaz emerge into kind of blossom now that he has a world title around his waist?
I agree, and I think yes. Again, another theme emerging in this show. Diaz Jr. has now admitted coming out the other side of some pretty serious clinical depression and mental health issues. He got help, and he talks about how he got help, and he did look at himself in the mirror and did get his mind right. And we are seeing the result in the ring. It's as much his mental status as his training. And he has got the belt boost, and pardon my dog barking here. It is really.
I think talking about Diaz has the boxer excited. Bill.
I think the boxer has excited about the boxer, Jojo. Yeah, he's got everything right now in his life, in his training. And I'm going to have to shut this down because she's not going to stop.
Okay, I'll go to you, Daniel. Pick up where Gayle left off, please.
I'll gladly do it because I've been a fan of Jojo Diaz for a bit. I've made that very clear when I talked into it, and it's not a situation where it wasn't that bad of a fight when he fought Gary Justice Jr. He did he did enough where he made a respectable effort. But yeah, he got his help. He beat a guy that not a lot of people want to face in Tevin Farmer. Now remember this, he's one of the guys that Floyd does not want Tank to see any part of. And he won pretty handedly in that area. So it helps build up the confidence for this because 130, okay, you win this. There's no, like I said, there's no divisions right now between Golden Boy and Top Rank. And Miguel Burchelt handles his business. There's other things there. Oscar Valdez handles his business. You go in that area. So there's a lot of possibilities for him to go into it. There's also the possibility of him even rematching Russell Jr., which wouldn't be bad because we'll see the improvement how it was in the first fight. Because, like I mentioned, the first fight, it wasn't like he got washed. He did pretty well.
And let me add, this is not a gimme fight. We've got a similar opponent to Warrington in that we've got a young guy making his first appearance in the United States. But in this case, Rakhimov, who's a native of Tajikistan, he's 15-0, undefeated, 12 knockouts, never been stopped. So he's a little more of a test. He's managed by Egis Klimas, who has brought a lot of very, very good Eastern European fighters over to the United States. So while everybody expects to see JoJo win, it's not a walkover fight by any means. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I'm intrigued by this. And if there was a complete long shot fight that you might want to take a chance on, this might be the one.
Indeed. I think we're going to shut down the show on that note. I want to thank everybody who joined us in the chat. I want to thank Mr. Doc for his comments and his questions. I want to thank who else was here? Saints Retro Football. I want to thank Ivan DC20. I want to thank
Bronze Plumber.
The Bronze Plumber. I forgot him as well. With his Mr. Mexican Beef, don't need to feast on plant comments. Again, I think that fight will happen between Canelo and Plant long term. And again, I think that Canelo will have to go on the beef and go vegetarian. And I think he will do that. He will feast on plant-based foods, aka Caleb Plant, should they ever fight. Going to go again, as I said earlier. If you like what you heard, be it listening live to us now on YouTube or listening to the show, checking us out on YouTube later on, please make sure to hit that like button. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Say if you're checking us out on iTunes and Spotify. If you like what you've heard on iTunes and Spotify, please make sure you subscribe. And please leave some comments. Leave your comments. What we're doing good as far as the show, and how we can improve. A 5-star review from iTunes will get read during a future episode. I want to go around the panel here. Gayle from Communities Digital News. You always start the shows with ladies first. I end the shows with ladies first. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk business, because you do teach media, and for those who want to talk media, because you do teach media on the side, as well as PR. Public relations. Let the folks know where they can find you.
My regular column runs on Communities Digital News. Online, that's COM, COMM, DITI news.com.
And you were telling me before the show that about your website, which is, I believe, has been updated now. Give a plug for that, please.
FalconValleyGroup.com is my regular business. And I was getting a kick out of it because we, of course, are linked to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report.
Yay. I thank you for doing it. I thank you for doing that. I'll go to you, Daniel. For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk the NBA, particularly when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you. And just like I gave the opportunity for Gayle to shoot a plug for her site, I'm going to give you a plug give you the opportunity to shoot the plug for your show with Francis and Joe from Full Boxing News.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter, Rawkus99 or RAWKZ99. I guess we're bringing it back up. Our next show is going to be, there's something to discuss, either President's Day or the Tuesday afterwards. Obviously, because if people don't know, Joe and Francis, happily married couple, and ain't no way I'm going to disturb them during Valentine's Day. So
Understood.
definitely,
Understood.
yeah, in that area, and it's starting to pick up. February, March, luckily, it's starting to pick up. You'll start seeing more things coming in, and hopefully, like I said, this builds into a good year because we definitely need that the last year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, for those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with me, Brother JR at Brother JR76 on Twitter. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to check out all the information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, for the time being, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Top right of the blog page will find links to where the links to search us out all over social media, the Facebook page, the Twitter page, where you can donate, got a Cash Me and PayPal donation links, the links to my online coaching page over on beachbody.com. As I said before, if you're interested in getting your body right or stepping your fitness up to the next level, please check me out. My online coaching page on Pound for Pound Boxing Report. And if you want to email Pound for Pound Boxing Report, you can do so at P4P BOXREPORT 1 P4P Box Report 1 at gmail.com. And also, I don't do this enough, but check out my writings on 3kingsboxing.com. Shout out again to head of 3 Kings Boxing, Bo. Oh, let me stop that because 2K get mad at me. The head of 3 Kings Boxing, 2K, aka Prodigy of Boxing Talk. Bo, the head of media relations, for putting me, asking me to be a part of the team a couple of years ago. Also, the senior writers on 3 Kings Boxing, head senior writer Bakari, fellow senior writer Jarrell, as well as myself, the editor Red. We talked about Neary and the controversy surrounding him and letting go of trainer Eddie Reynoso. I did a write-up for that. It's going to drop on 3 Kings Boxing. It should be on there right now. Just check that out, 3kingsboxing.com. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Jojo Diaz and Rockimov, Patrick Teixeira and Brian Castano, that DAZN card, Warrington and Lara, that fight over in London at Wembley, and also the ESPN card for Comey and Marinez, as well as Joe Smith Jr. Vlasov. We will do a recap of those fights and do some previews of fights that's going to happen on the weekend of the 20th. To be specific, Miguel Burchell, very good fight against Oscar Valdez. That fight is going to happen in Las Vegas on the bubble. It's going to be on ESPN. And on the undercard, check out 18-year-old. I believe he's going to turn 18 this year. Alexander Zayas. Gayle mentioned him to me a couple of years ago. I interviewed him for here on Pound for Pound Box Report and 3 Kings Boxing. You can go to 3kingsboxing.com, check out the live video feed from there. Or if you look back at the Pound for Pound Box Report archives on YouTube, you can check out that interview. He's fighting a fighter by the name of James Martin, 6-round welterweight contest. Zayas is a prospect on the come up. Very good, tall, skilled welterweight with power in both hands. So check him out as well. Question, Gayle and Daniel. Has there been an opponent announced for Adrian Broner's fight that's supposed to happen on the 20th, or is that completely off?
Yes, there has been an opponent named for Broner's fight, and I have got to look that up. It is, I'll stand by. To confirm. It is a kid named Santiago out of Puerto Rico.
So yeah, Broner versus
And I say a kid only because his record is somewhat thin, but he is 14-0 with 10 knockouts, one draw. He is, however, 31 years old. So you have to question, whether.
Ah,
But he has fought all his career, either in Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic. He has fought for some minor WBA regional titles. That's what's getting him the nod. That's what's getting it. And once again, here's a guy, nothing to lose, getting a decent payday. What the heck? Just, you know, curb your enthusiasm, everybody.
oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, wait. What weight is this supposed to be at? First of all,
I mean, the way Broder's talking, he's actually, for once, getting serious. He's claiming he's
Broner
lost over 40
absolutely.
pounds.
Yep. Broner absolutely claims he's reformed. His partying days are done. No alcohol, no fooling around. He's getting enough sleep. He's getting on Facebook and Instagram and having chats with people and showing off his juices and all this stuff. So, everyone loves a redemption story. Who knows?
So I guess he's
so
just sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm not gonna be mad at him for that.
yeah, but the bad part is, what's the over under within the next 2 or 3 weeks? Finding him videos of him in Magic City throwing money around.
Stand by.
Right. So yeah, he's gonna be fighting. That fight will be on the 20th, Uncasville, Connecticut, Showtime card. On the undercard of that, Robert Easter Jr. He's gonna be fighting as well. If for those UK observers, an interesting local fight over there, David Avanesian fighting Josh Kelly for the European welterweight title. Excuse me. So yeah, we will talk about all of those. We will touch on all of those fights. Again, I want to thank everybody who checked us out live on YouTube. Thank you once again for your comments and your questions. Is greatly appreciated. For Gail from Communities Digital News, from Daniel of the Inscriber, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 313 of the Powertown Boxer Report. Everyone have a good evening. Good night. And certainly last but not least, once again, rest in power to one Leon Spinks.